Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm thrilled to be sharing my reptile house tour of 2022. My voice is a little hoarse because I'm recovering from a cold, and I filmed voiceovers for hours today for this video. So I'm just a little bit tired, a little bit sore, so I do apologize. And because I'm a little bit tired, I have not done my face or my hair, and I'm wearing a Christmas onesie because it's very soft, very cozy. So keep your judgments to yourself, okay? We have a couple disclaimers before we get started. One, if you don't know who I am or what I do, hi, I'm Jessica and I run a sanctuary for reptiles and amphibians. I've been doing this for over 8 years. The vast majority of animals that I keep came from situations of rescue, rehoming, adoption, and surrender, and a lot of the animals that I have a long-term disability or defect. If you watch this video and you feel particularly called to support what I do, first of all, thank you, I appreciate you. There's a number of ways you can do that. You can share the video, like the video, you can leave a nice comment. You can check out the links below for supporting us monetarily, like through Patreon, or by becoming a channel member, or by sending a donation, or by checking out the Amazon wish list, which gives things to the reptiles like supplies that are needed for their care. You can also consider checking out Teespring, which is for merch. I mean, there's tons and tons of ways to support, but really, I'm just grateful that you're here. I appreciate you. The last disclaimer that I have is that I do not recommend you watch this video and think that this is an achievable thing for the vast majority of people. I don't want, by posting this video, to be advertising that this level of animal keeping is something that is attainable, achievable, and realistic for a lot of people. You can't tell just from these 3 enclosures, but I have over 70 animals, and I understand that is an absurd amount to the average person, and I also agree that not the average person should be keeping this many. Like I said, I have 8 years of experience, and I have a really great exotic vet who I just saw today, actually, for Rainies, who we'll talk about that later in the video. While I absolutely love what I do, and like, this is my passion, I feel called to do it, I don't ever have regrets about doing it. While I love it, I just want to be responsible with my platform and say that this is not something that I want to encourage people to go out there and do, right? Like, I don't want to encourage people to impulse buy or accumulate animals or anything like that. And if you see an animal in this video and you feel called to keep that animal, please do extensive research before getting that animal. With all that said, let's go ahead and get started. So we started last year's tour downstairs, so let's start upstairs this time. Here we are in one reptile room, aka my bedroom, and it's kind of like half reptile room, half Jessica room, or like a quarter Jessica room, a quarter Jackson room, and a half reptile room. But regardless, this is just as much Jackson's bedroom as mine, and you're gonna see him a lot in this video, which is very lucky for you because he is super cute. So here's an overview. My walls are very busy. There's a lot going on in my room. If that's not your thing, that's okay. You can keep it to yourself, or else I'll have to meet you in the comments with fisticuffs. Okay, and now let's look at the rack first. So I have Crested gecko enclosures. That's who we're gonna go over first. This is Ree's enclosure. Rhea was my first reptile ever. I got her on June 1st, 2014, so she kicked off my reptile keeping, and also she was my first pet-only reptile. So she kind of kicked off my need to have like pet-only, rescued, adopted, disabled reptiles. Rhea actually turned 10 in September. You'll see her here in a second. She's tucked away under her fake plant. Rhea and all the other crested geckos are in 18-18-24 exoterras with DIY backgrounds and sides, made using the expanding foam and silicone method. They also have cork rounds, manzanita driftwood, Fluker's pothos vines, and bioactive substrate. You can learn more about their enclosures by watching my Meet My Crested Geckos video, and you'll also get to learn about my crested geckos in that video as well. I'll leave it linked below. I'll also leave like playlists below where you can find these videos, like an enclosure tour playlist and also a playlist for like Meet My Pets videos where I go into detail about their backstories, where they came from, things like that. Rhea is probably one of my grumpiest and most skittish reptiles, so I don't really get to hang out with her much, but I love her dearly. Now this is Rue's enclosure. A trend that you'll notice is that all of my New Caledonian geckos have R names, so Marie, now Rue, later you meet Roshi, and Rin, and Rayla, so it might get confusing. You might notice that Rue looks a little wonky, and that's because she was born with curved and misshapen bones due to a lack of calcium. She doesn't know she's any different, and she gets around just fine. In fact, she has like the cutest little hops. She came to live here in 2019, but I actually first agreed to take her in 2018, so I've loved her for a really long time. I think she's the longest I've ever waited for a reptile, and in her unboxing video, I wept, and it was very cringy. but I can't help it. She's so cute. You might notice that her enclosure is a little cluttered like towards the middle. That is just to help her get around as easy as possible. Also, something super cute about Rue is that when my boyfriend Ben first met her, he had like the sweetest look on his face, like he loves her so much. Next up is Roshi's enclosure. Roshi is so full of energy and he's truly chaotic and he loves to jump and fly around and try to bite me. So I left the top of his enclosure quite open with just a couple branches so that he could really utilize that space to do his chaoticness. He's actually not present in the footage right now, but just a few seconds ago when I was looking at Chocho's, you could see him in the background, like sitting on the floor of his enclosure. Roshi was found for rehoming on Craigslist in 2019. And this is Roshi at night. Next up is Rayla, another one of my pet-only Cresties. She's in the same type of enclosure as the rest, all the same elements. I actually got Rayla because when I had a round of enclosures before these ones, I had built an extra because I had it and I just figured why not. And I said the next pet-only Crested gecko I see for rehoming gets the spot, and that was her. She's been with me since 2020. She's a very goofy looking girl, but you can't really capture that in this next clip. And here's Rayla at night. And now we're on to my fire skink Roku's enclosure. It's a 36 by 18 by 18 exoterra with a DIY background and sides, including quirk rounds that make a tunnel system throughout the back and sides because fire skinks love to climb and they love to hide. So I wanted Roku to have both of those elements and be able to have his arboreal privacy. The enclosure also features grapevine wood as well as cork hides in the bioactive substrate. I have Fluker's pothos vines throughout. You'll probably get tired of seeing those, but honestly I love them and they're inexpensive. For heat, they have a DP projector and an under tank heater, whose water dish always has a little dirt in it. Like, I literally touched the background by accident and dirt falls into it. So if you see that, I apologize. I literally just changed it right before filming. And, there it is. It's a very unfortunate thing about reptile keeping. You can keep things as tidy as possible and it will not stay that way. So I got Roku back in 2018 off of Craigslist, and this wasn't always the case where Roku would just pop out and say hello to me if I was in the enclosure, but as of the last few years, Roku just is, oh my god, just an absolute joy. Every time I come by the enclosure, oh yes mother, I would like food. Every time I open the doors, oh yes mother, I would like food. Every time I spray the enclosure, oh yes mother, please bring me the food. Roku is so enthusiastic about food that they will literally charge the door and borderline jump out if I'm not quick enough, especially at night because that's when Roku expects to be fed. During the day, Roku's usually just vibing, chilling, and then if I open the door, they're like, oh, you're here. And then, they come out and ask for food. But at nighttime, they're already ready. They just sit by the door and wait for me. And everyone always asks this, but yes, Roku is named after Avatar Roku from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Next up is my tiger salamander enclosure, aka an enclosure with dirt in it, because Neville hasn't been actively above the substrate for a year and a half, except for a few weeks at the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022. I dig her up every 90-ish days to feed her and check on her, but it's such a stark difference to when Neville used to be the star of the show, our very own dirt diva, above the substrate all the time, putting on her antics since she came home in 2018. She even has her own jacuzzi in her 24 by 18 by 18 exoterra, but nope, she's decided to stay under, and this is a picture of her for reference. I miss her very much. Now we're on to Chocho's enclosure. Chocho is my chubby frog, and again, one of Ben's favorites. She is in an 18 by 18 by 12 exoterra with bioactive substrate, a DIY background, a log hide, driftwood, as well as a stream area that I call Chocho's jacuzzi. She loves to soak in there and pretend to be a rock, which you'll see here in a minute. Chocho was a Craigslist rehome and I welcomed her home in 2019. I mean, look at her, she's just darling. Next up is Shukaku. Shukaku lives in a 36 by 18 by 18 exoterra and is a Peter's banded skink. The exoterra has universal rocks background and custom reptile habitat side pieces, ledges, water dish, and hides. I have a link with custom reptile habitats. You'll hear me mention that again in this video probably quite a few times. So just so you're aware, I have a link with them down below. And this enclosure also features cork bark and multiple inches of a sandy soil blend. It's not bioactive because it would not sustain a population of isopods in my opinion, but if any of you guys have tips, I'm willing to give it a go. Shukaku requires high heat, so they have a DP projector and a halogen and an under tank heater. Shikaku was rescued by another person in the community who knew I wanted a Peter's banded skink, and they offered Shu to me. They actually delivered Shu and my Uromastyx wren to me when I was in Tennessee to avoid shipping. They had a really long drive too, so that was really cool. I brought Shu home in 2021, and now here we are looking at my smallest enclosure. This is my Crested gecko Rune's enclosure. She's still a juvenile and just came home a few months ago. She lives in a 12 by 12 by 12 exoterra with simplistic DIY background, tiny cork rounds, small weathered manzanita branches, a bamboo round, and eco-earth on the bottom. Rune had an injury at birth that resulted in the loss of many of her toe tips, and that's how she ended up with me. She's doing really well in this new enclosure, but I'm still getting to know her. And this is my Chinese cave geckos enclosure. Her name is Nymeria, and she lives in this 18-18-18 exoterra. The background is not my best work, as this was built in like 2018 or 2019. It was one of my first that I ever did, and for that reason, it could use some touch-ups, but I really love it. Nymeria loves it too, to be honest. I put cork rounds throughout the entire background for her to climb through and make sure she could have privacy, much like Roku. She uses them a lot. She also has a cork round in the bottom of the enclosure that has 3 entry points, so she loves to hide in there. She also has a cork round on the side with access to a heater, but this species likes it pretty cool, so she's not in there that often. Her substrate is bioactive. I decided to lure her out with food so you can see her, and here she is gobbling down some little dubia nymphs. Nymeria is a shy lady, but she is so cool. One of my dream species. In fact, I found her on Craigslist in 2018, and I talked about how much I wanted her in a live stream back when I still did live streams. She was actually a gift from a friend who saw me talking about her, and they went and picked her up in Chicago and brought her to me, which was super sweet. And now we move on to the dresser enclosure, which features Fugaku, my red-eyed crocodile skink. Her enclosure is made from a 20-gallon long and includes a land section and a water section. The background is from Universal Rocks, and the side pieces and ledges are from custom reptile habitats. Again, a link below. The water section features a filter. I rigged a tube to the output and ran it through a hole I drilled in the background to create a waterfall of sorts. Fugaku loves to stand under that spot and just let the water fall over her, so I'm really happy I did that. The substrate is bioactive and features small rock hides that have holes cut in them so she can get in there. There's also manzanita branches and ferns, and the ferns are from custom reptile habitats. Here is Fugaku in all of her beautiful glory. I was sent her a rehoming listing on Facebook and picked her up in 2018, and she was a dream species of mine to keep. And now here we are with my axolotl tanks. So Ron, my axolotl, is up top in the 40-gallon because he is much bigger, and Harry is below in the 29-gallon because she is much smaller. Both tanks feature Carib Sea Naturals white sand, manzanita wood, and fake plants, which you can find in my Amazon affiliate shop, linked below. A lot of the things that I use in my enclosures you can find there, so it's a good resource. Both tanks have fluval canister filters and fans to keep them at a cooler temperature. Ron has a hide that he absolutely loves, and Harry will not use any hides whatsoever, so I just made sure to include plenty of plants, which she likes to hang out in. Ron has a prolapsed cloaca and was rehomed to me through caudata.org in 2015. Harry was being kept really abysmally in one of those half-gallon, maybe less, plastic boxes advertised for betta fish. Didn't have a filter or a hide or anything, just purple sand, and I brought them home in 2017. On screen, Harry is eating a Hikari massivore pellet, but both salamanders really enjoy earthworms, so whenever you see my animals eating something on screen, please don't assume that that's all they eat.
You ready? Let's go. Get your toy. Let's go. 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 Let's go.
And with Jackson's kind escort, now we go to the hallway. Yes, I keep 2 small tanks in the hallway. Judge me all you want, it's a chunk of usable space between my room and the pet room. Okay, moving on. These are my Bombina tanks. I have 2 fire-bellied toads and 6 yellow-bellied toads. The fire-bellied toads have green on top and orange bellies, and they're named Asami and Mako. The yellow-bellied toads are gray-brown on top with yellow undersides, and they are named Aang, Katara, Sakatov, Suki, and Zuko. Yes, I can tell them all apart most of the time. The 2 fire-bellied toads are in a 15-gallon, and the 6 yellow-bellied toads are in a 20-long. I know that sounds like a lot, but 4 of my frogs are smaller than average, like 2 of them are half the size of full-grown ones, and this is not permanent. I would love to have a 40-gallon breeder tank for both of them and set up like really cool, probably more like riparium than polydarium, but I also would love to have Zoom-Ed low boys, but they are so hard to find. Anyways, these tanks are working for the time being, and they're way better than the previous enclosure I used. I swear, there is no point to have a land section for these guys. I built them 2 polydariums with like bioactive land areas, and they never went there. Just a waste of space. Both tanks have Anubias live plants and fake plants, the same ones that are my axolotl tanks. They are bare bottom for ease of cleaning, and they have Malaysian driftwood, which is why the water is so tannin rich. Like, I just did a really serious water change before this, and I'll include a clip at the end of this that shows you how dark the water got in just a couple days. They also have filters fitted with tubes that run up to the top of the driftwood to make a trickle down effect instead of the water just spitting back out into the water. And my frogs and I both really enjoy this. It's way nicer to look at and listen to. This is a very social and active frog, so I recommend keeping them in pairs or better yet groups. I used to have 4 fire-bellied toads. I had them from 2016 to 2020, but I had one pass away and I had another one that escaped an enclosure that I built and was never found. It was truly devastating, and honestly, like, I've never really recovered. Like, sometimes I still walk around and think I'll find them jumping around on the floor, even though that's literally impossible. It's part of the reason that I prefer something more simplistic now, because it makes finding all the frogs easier and therefore my anxiety can be less. My fire-bellied toads were surrendered to my local Petco, and then I adopted them through Petco's adoption program. So I didn't purchase them from Petco, but I did find them there. They were actually surrendered in a 12 by 12 by 18 Zoo-Med enclosure with bark on the ground and a single water dish and a single plant, which is literally not a good way to keep them. Like, I was like, oh my god, I'm so happy they're still alive and in good condition. And I've had my yellow-bellied toads since 2020. And then here is the clip I was talking about, where you can see how dark the water got after just like 3 or 4 days. And it's so much darker now. And now we're in the pet room. I am not showing the entirety of the room as I'm currently working on a few enclosures, namely upgrades for some crested geckos, some leopard geckos, and a surprise tank that you don't need to know about unless you're a patron. So if you want to know, that's the place. All of the black stacked enclosures are leopard gecko enclosures made by All American Cages. I've had them for 2 years and I love them, so make sure you check out the link that I have with them down below. My white's tree frog enclosure is also from them. We're going to start with the leopard gecko enclosures. Be aware that a lot of my leopard geckos have defects or disabilities. I will leave a Meet My Leopard Geckos video on the screen that goes into more depth. I will also leave a video about the leopard gecko enclosures themselves down below, so you can learn about how I decorated them, how I heated them, and depth. First up, this is Varus, and he lives in a 36 by 18 by 12 enclosure with manzanita driftwood, cork bark, substrate, and Fluker's pothos vines. All of the geckos have humid hides, water dishes, and calcium dishes. A lot of them have the same elements of cork and driftwood. It's going to vary from enclosure to enclosure. But anyways, this is Varus, and he's a max snow leopard gecko. He's a big boy with a curious demeanor, and he was a Craigslist rehome / rescue situation in 2016. I also got my gecko Brienne at the time. You'll meet her in a little bit. Next up is Tywin, another big boy. Tywin has some reproductive health issues, and for that reason I chose to keep him on paper towel in his 36 by 18 by 12 enclosure, but he does have a large humid hide with substrate, so he can dig in there if he wants to. Tywin has hanging plants and ground ferns by Exoterra, and he has cork hides. He has a voracious appetite. Tywin has a voracious appetite and loves to stalk me in the pet room. This is Viserion. He's in a 36 by 18 by 12 with substrate, manzanita driftwood, cholla wood, and cork bark. Viserion is a lemon frost with a visible tumor on his jaw. This is a morph-specific issue, and he came to me in 2018 for that reason. Please don't think your leopard gecko, just because it's yellow or has spots, is a lemon frost. If you don't know your leopard gecko's morph, it's not a lemon frost. Up next is Jojen. Jojen has white and yellow syndrome, a neurological disorder associated with the white and yellow morph. It's a complicated topic, and I will leave a video on it down below, so please watch that if you have any questions. He's in a 36 by 18 by 12 with paper towel for this reason, but he does have substrate in his humid hide. He loves to dig and put it all over the place. I've had him since 2017. He was surrendered to me from the breeder because of his syndrome. So this is Benjen. As you can see, he has a severe underbite and a flat skull. His body is long and he doesn't hold weight super well, but his biggest issue is having chronic respiratory issues and congenital kidney issues. Because of this, Benjamin lives in a 36 by 18 by 12 with paper towel, and he has paper towel in his humid hide. I got him in 2017. He was a surrender from a breeder, and he has so much personality. He is so fun, so goofy, and he loves to jump out of his enclosure, which is why I have him placed towards the bottom of the stack. This is Merlin, who came from the same place as Benjamin, but 1 year earlier in 2016. He has a variety of skeletal defects, especially on his face. For that reason, he's kept on paper towel, and he is in a 36 by 18 by 12. His personality is quite unpredictable. He's very moody and loves to explore. And now we have the stack of female leopard geckos, starting with Brienne. Her 36 by 18 by 12 enclosure is decorated like Varys's because they are both big, hardy geckos, and they came from the same rehoming situation in 2016. Brienne has cork, manzanita driftwood, Fluker's pothos vines. Her personality is as big as her eyes. She is quick, stubborn, vibrant, and just has so much personality. Next we have Renly, another big-eyed girl. Renly was my second leopard gecko ever, and I got her through a Craigslist rescue / rehoming situation in 2015. She's in a 36 by 18 by 12 with substrate, cork, manzanita, driftwood, all the same as the other geckos. She's my oldest leopard gecko at 13 to 14 years old, if her former owner was correct about her age. She is as lovely as she is cute. This is Marcella. Marcella is a gecko with Enigma syndrome. Enigma syndrome is a neurological disorder associated with the Enigma morph, but because her condition is so slight, she can live in a 36 to 18 by 12 enclosure with substrate. The rest of my Enigmas cannot, and you'll see that soon. In her enclosure, you will also find various standing plants from Exoterra and Manzanita and cork. She was a Craigslist rehoming in 2016. She's a bit of a sassy lady, has a fantastic appetite and feeding response though, which I very much appreciate. Amy was a Craigslist rehome in 2015, and she had quite a few homes before coming to me, so she's, had a lot of houses. She lives in a 36 by 18 by 12 enclosure with all the good stuff. She has a gorgeous purple tail, but you can't see it, unfortunately. She's pretty chill and always has been, and also she's a circus performer when it comes to poops and likes to put them in peculiar, hard-to-reach places. Next up, we have Tormund, who was born with a neurological condition and one eye smaller than the other. I also think her head is kind of egg-shaped. Tormund's former owner reached out to me shortly after she was born in 2017 because they knew I worked with special cases, and I happily took her on. Because of her balance issues, she is on paper towel in her 36 by 18 by 12 enclosure. She melts my heart all of the time. She always comes to see me when I sit down in the pet room. She has the cutest little face, and she's just such a sweetie. Up next, we have Arya, who was rehomed to me through Craigslist in 2017 and was in pretty bad condition because she was really malnourished and extremely overweight. Arya lives in a 36 by 18 by 12. She's a great personality, great feeder, and also she's in shed during this clip, so that's why she looks kind of ghastly. She also looks like a little alien, and I have to watch out because sometimes she gets nose plugs. Moving on to the wall of leopard gecko enclosures. We're going to start off with the 18 by 18 by 12 enclosures on the bottom. This is Melisandre, who's already made a mess of her humid hide, and I just cleaned the enclosure prior to filming, so that's very nice of her. It's a 15-gallon equivalent, which is too small for able-bodied geckos, but because Melisandre has pretty severe Enigma syndrome, this is the enclosure that suits her best. Melisandre was purchased by someone, I think with the intent to breed her, and then they discovered that she had Enigma syndrome and decided not to, so she was sent to live with me in 2017. This is Eddard, another gecko with Enigma syndrome. He was purchased as a pet only from a breeder back in 2016, and then that person had to rehome him shortly after, so he found his way to me. Again, if you want to know about Enigma syndrome, I'll leave a video down below, but Eddard is just a total sweetie. He reminds me a lot of the demeanor of Tormund and Renly, who are just like steal your heart type of geckos. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention all of the Enigmas or any of the geckos in 18-18-12s are on paper towel, and they have similar elements to the other enclosures like cork bark and driftwood. This is Rhaego. He was purchased from an expo as a pet only, and his former owner couldn't get him to eat for over a month, so he sent him to me. Rhaego is blind, has undeveloped eyelids and double cleft nostrils, extra skin, and reproductive health issues. He's in an 18-18-12 because he has stunted growth and is full grown at 33 grams, plus because he's blind, having a smaller enclosure, it's easier for him to get around. Rhaego is great at eating off of tongs, he loves to climb, and he has a special place in my heart. This is Gilly, another Enigma. Gilly and her sister Sam unfortunately passed a few months ago, were surrendered to me in 2016, and they were my first real experience with Enigma syndrome because of the severity of their condition. Gilly was super underweight, had stuck shed, lacked color. It didn't take long to rejuvenate her though, and now she's a beautiful, energetic girl. She loves food and she loves to climb on top of her humid hide and watch me when I'm in the pet room, which is really cute. She's a bit of a sass lady too, which I admire. She's super food motivated. This is Rainey's. She was purchased from a breeder by a person who then later rehomed her to me due to my experience with Enigma syndrome. She's a curious girl, but it's hard to tell by this clip because she's hiding in the back. She's a little bit of a smushed kind of short face like a lot of super snows have, and for that reason, she has a nose plug. She's going to the vet today actually in just a few hours to have it cleaned out, but I just wanted to say that in case anybody notices it, though it's really hard to notice because it's super small. And next up we have Marjorie, who I like to call my baby dinosaur or my baby velociraptor because she looks like one and she has the energy of one. She was born with a neurological disorder and some eye issues and was sent by someone who purchased her with the intent to breed her and then didn't in 2017. It's hard to tell, but her eyelids didn't form properly in the corners and one of her eyes is slightly smaller than the other. She's full grown and less than 40 grams. Despite her neuro issues, she's pretty active, so I like to have a lot of climbing surfaces for her. I just can't give her too much room or height in case she falls. I don't want her to hurt herself. It's not uncommon to find neuro geckos with little scrapes here and there. You can actually see here how big her eyes are for her face and how her eyelids don't meet in the corners. Also, I'm doing some finger flutters above her to get her to look up so you guys could see her eyes. But yeah, they all ate before I filmed, so a lot of them just don't care about me right now. This is Roz, a gecko with Enigma syndrome who is also a white and yellow morph, so she's just a big old mess, genetically speaking. She was purchased from a breeder by a breeder, and when they saw her condition, they decided to send her to me in 2018. She was in her humid hide at the time of filming, and I didn't want to bother her, so I just got a clip of her inside of it. She is missing some toe tips and her tail tip like a lot of Enigmas. And now we have my smallest leopard gecko out of all of them. This is Davos. She is full grown. A breeder reached out to me in 2021 asking if I would take her in because she has one eye smaller than the other and one leg shorter than the rest, and she's missing one toe. All of this is due to an incubation fluctuation when she was in the egg. She's got a lot of spirit in that little body. She's in an 18-18-12 because she's so little, and having a smaller space helps her get around easier because obviously, as you could see, her leg is shorter than the rest, and that kind of gives her a little bit of a limp. Now we are on to the 24x18x12 enclosures. This is Liana, and she's one of the geckos that'll be getting an upgrade soon. I have the enclosure and I start the build just after the holidays, so I'm very excited. Liana has been with me since I got Torment back in 2017. There's nothing different or difficult about her except her personality. She is quick, mildly aggressive, and vocal. She's just full of oomph, that unnameable quality that makes me fear for my fingertips and laugh at the same time. This is Aegon, who's a gecko with white and yellow syndrome. He also has the same congenital kidney issues as Benjen. For those reasons, Egg Boy is on paper towel. He is very lively. He runs to the front when he sees me because he wants food, but in this clip, he already ate, so he does not care about me. Aegon came to live with me when the breeder noticed he had a neurological issue back in 2021. I've only been able to raise a handful of my geckos from the juvenile age to adulthood, and Aegon is one of those, and it's always really special to me to get to see them grow. And he started doing a little flutter of his tail tip, so I decided, I'll leave him alone. Now we are on to another gecko in a 24x18x12. Her name is Mira. She's on paper towel due to the fact that she has underdeveloped eyelids. Mira also has a bit of extra skin, and her sister, who I don't have, was born with one leg shorter than the rest. I've known Mira since the day she hatched, but she came to live with me sometime later in 2018. Mira has stunted growth, so I feel just fine with her living in a 24x18x12. She's a little skittish, but generally sweet and loves food. Also in a 24x18x12 and on paper towel is my gecko Kinvara, who has white and yellow syndrome. She was given to me by a breeder who purchased her with the intent to breed her in 2020 and decided not to due to her neurological issues. She's a very excitable gecko, and the energy she has is admirable. She also has incredible gusto for food, like bite down on the tongs and not let go type of gusto. It's equal parts endearing and alarming. This is Theon, another gecko who has white and yellow syndrome, and another gecko who's in a 24 by 18 by 12, and another gecko who's on paper towel. Yes, I'm aware he does not have the appearance of a white and yellow. Again, please watch my video about white and yellow syndrome for more information. Theon was sent to me by a breeder who noticed his issues in 2019 and decided to seek out a pet-only home for him. He is a super sweet, goofy boy who will do any level of theatrics for food. Next up, we have Elia, who is a gecko that was extremely neglected to the point of severe metabolic bone disease. She was rescued and rehabilitated by an amazing person, and after a few months, she was sent to live here with me in 2019. Despite her misshapen bones, she enjoys hunting rather than tongue feeding, which I think is really cute, and she likes to climb up her cork from time to time. I actually have a clip I posted on Tik Tok of her on top of her cork, like she climbed up there by herself, just as like a bit of evidence that like even if a gecko has misshapen bones, like you should still be giving them enrichment. Due to her disability, she is on paper towel and in a 24 by 18 by 12. Another really incredible thing about Elia is that she sheds her entire body by herself without any struggle, with the exception of one foot, and I just think that's really cool. This is Alisane. She is one of the geckos that's in for an upgrade. She's in a 24 by 18 by 12 with substrate, cork, driftwood, some exoterra plants. She was taken in as a rescue, and the individual reached out to me asking if I could take her and another gecko who was in worse shape in, but unfortunately that gecko was euthanized, so Alice came here alone. She's missing almost, if not all, of her toe tips, and she has a burn mark on her back that has faded with time. Alice unfortunately lays eggs every year that I've had her, which gives her a pretty voracious appetite on top of her natural interest in food, and it is impressive and also a little scary. She's a really great, personable gecko. I'd also like to clarify, those are infertile eggs. I am not a breeder, and I wish my geckos never laid eggs because they don't need to. It's pointless and just, takes a lot of their nutrients away from them. I wish it was different, but, she just does what she does. So does Egret. We'll talk about her later. This is Tyrion, another gecko who's in for an upgrade. He's in a 24 by 18 by 12 with substrate, and he really enjoys to dig in it. Tyrion came to me in 2020 when I was getting my African fat-tailed gecko Jamie. The breeder had him for a few years and wondered if, since he's a pet-only Eublepharus macularis afghanicus, if I would want him, and I most definitely did. Tyrion has a little bit of a short face and tail, and he's got a lot of extra skin. He also sometimes has eye issues, but they're super minimal. One of my favorite things about Tyrion is that when he sheds, he removes all of it, but he doesn't eat all of it. So he'll leave like a glove or a leg piece behind, which I think is super cool because I get to keep it. On screen now is Carsi, who is a Eublepharus fuscus, aka a West Indian leopard gecko. She is also in for an upgrade. I found her as a pet-only listing on Gecko Boa in 2019 and did not want to miss out on the opportunity to keep this species, so I grabbed her up. She is pet-only due to having a spinal defect at the base of her tail. She's also super shy, so I had to get her out with food. This is Jorah, who was formerly named Vash. He was purchased by an ex of mine in 2016 and then left in my care when we split. He's a very easygoing gecko, never gives me any difficulty. He's in a 36 by 18 by 12 and has substrate. He also has red rock and man-made caves and cholla wood. He also has some manzanita branches, and he has some fake succulents and air plants that are from Josh's Frogs. And after Jorah, we have Fritz, who's my first leopard gecko ever. He doesn't have a Game of Thrones name for that reason, but his middle name is Tyrion. He lives in a 36 by 18 by 12 enclosure and was adopted from the now defunct Happy Gecko Rescue. Fritz is a grumpy boy, but I love him dearly. He only wants to be bothered with my presence if I have brought him food. Otherwise, I am merely an annoyance to his existence, and he'd prefer if I just left. The second to last leopard gecko I have to feature is Egret. She's in an all-American cages enclosure that measures 24 by 18 by 18. It has a background from Universal Rocks and side ledges from Custom Reptile Habitats, link below. Egret was born with one eye smaller than the other and an underbite, and I have had her since 2018. She'll be moving out of this enclosure into something else, I think, but I'm still working out the plans. She's another one of my geckos who lays eggs every year, like I mentioned when we talked about Alisane. So she is crazy food motivated because she's got to, gain back all that weight she loses making eggs for absolutely no reason. This last leopard gecko is Meraxes. She's a Eublepharus angramanu, aka the Iranian fat-tailed gecko. She is in one of my favorite enclosures in the whole house. It's a 36 by 21 by 21 by Custom Reptile Habitats and has an awesome 3D wrap background modeled after real rock that just looks so rad. The enclosure, the background, all the hides came from Custom Reptile Habitats, again, linked below. I love their products and their customer service. Meraxes climbs a ton, so this is a perfect enclosure for her. Meraxes was found the same way Carsey was, as a pet only for sale on Gecko Boa's pet only page. I was dying to keep this species, so I jumped at the opportunity. She has a short, stubby tail tip, and one of her eyes is smaller than the other, just by a little bit though. In terms of personality, she is precise. All of her movements and her actions are carefully thought out. She's also a bit vocal with handling, which I find so cool, and she's a great hunter. We are finally done the leopard geckos, and we're on to the white tree frogs. That one is Durian. The one over here is Berry. In a second, you'll see Kiwi. That's my crazy kiwi. And then this is Coco, who has calcium on his face because he just ate before this clip, because if I don't feed them before I film them or even approach the enclosure, they will attack me from all angles. I got my white tree frogs from a rehoming situation in 2020, and it was a trial by fire for a while there because they came with parasites and some health issues. My frogs live in a 90-gallon enclosure made by All American Cages. The dimensions are 48 by 18 by 24. Again, I have a link below for All American Cages if you're interested. The background, sides, and ledges came from Custom Reptile Habitats. Again, linked below. They're wonderful. The enclosure is just absolutely beautiful. I also have manzanita branches throughout the enclosure and sphagnum moss on the floor. They also have Flocker's pothos vines. There are 3 bowls, including one custom-made one, which I'll leave a link for below. The frogs have UVB. Many of my animals do, and I might have forgotten to indicate that. So if you're curious, be sure to check out the specific enclosure tour videos, which I will leave a playlist for down below. I absolutely adore my chewed gum balls of chaos, because that's what they feel like to me. They feel like chewed gum, and they are very chaotic. And they've gone viral a few times this year on Tik Tok, so I'm very proud of them for attempting to pay off their vet bills. It was very nice of them. They haven't paid them off, let's be clear, but, you know, I'm happy they made the effort. Due to the health issues that I had with my frogs, they cannot have a bioactive substrate, which is, you know, not my favorite. So if you're gonna leave a comment down below about how they should have bioactive substrate, believe me, I did have it in the past, and unfortunately, because of their health issues, they have to have a substrate that can be thrown out and replaced really easily and inexpensively, which is why I'm using moss. And again, a lot of people have issues with moss too because they're worried of an impaction issue. I've used it for years without an issue. It's just my personal preference rather than something like topsoil or eco-earth, which would stick to them. Also, Kiwi had tried to eat the phone. That's why they're opening and closing their mouth, because they launched at the phone, which is, you know, just like them to do that. But yeah, I use moss. I haven't had any issues. If you would like to leave some comments about your experience down below, that's fine by me, but that's just my preference. Moving on. This enclosure is for my garter snake Mikasa, who is a lot bigger than she was in last year's reptile house tour. This is a 36 by 18 by 18 Exoterra, and it's not going to be her long-term enclosure, but I'm waiting for my other snake Sasha to get big enough, and then I'll introduce them to a bigger enclosure at the same time. Mikasa's enclosure has a DIY background made with the same building method that I do for a lot of my enclosures. She has tons of cork hides because she's a shy lady and needs to feel safe. She has manzanita branches, ferns from Exoterra, and a water dish. Her substrate is a bioactive blend, and the isopods in there, oh my god, they are thriving. Like, they love her poop. They are just living. Her source of heat is a DP projector, and she has UVB. Mikasa was found on Craigslist in 2020 as a super tiny baby snake, and I took both her and another snake that I named Aaron in, and I actually made like a huge recovery with Aaron, and then he died. It was really traumatic. I talked about it in a video where I introduced Mikasa formally on this channel, and so if you're interested in that video is out there, but it's depressing. I don't want to talk about it. Moving on. This year, Mikasa had to have surgery on her tail tip, which actually went super well. And also, I love having her. She's a fantastic snake. She's just a little bit of a grump butt sometimes. Now we're on to the African fat-tailed geckos. This is Obella's enclosure. She was rehomed to me in 2019 when her former owner was moving across the country, and she was actually given to me by a friend of the person who rehomed Rego to me. This is a 24 by 18 by 12 Exoterra with bioactive substrate and cork tiles for the background and sides. She has cork, Flocker's pothos vines, and driftwood in her enclosure. And during the day, she has halogen bulb for heating, and at night, she has an under tank heater. She's a very chill gecko, not super fond of climbing or being handled. This is Jamie. He's an African fatso gecko as well. He's a super tiny guy that I saw a breeder post about in 2020 because he was born with one less foot. I had to have him, honestly. He was a grumpy boy for a long time, but now he's pretty chill. He's quick and enjoys a climb now and again despite having 3 feet instead of 4. He lives in a 24 by 18 by 12 exoterra with bioactive substrate, DIY background, cork bark, flukers pothos vines, manzanita driftwood, and he has the same heating as Obella. This was actually my first African fatso gecko of the 3, but he's the last one I'm showing you. His name's Oberon. He's a grumpy, shy boy and an escape artist, so you won't actually get to see him on video, but I will include a photo of him. He's in an 18-18-18 exoterra with cork tile sides because he loves to climb. He also has a half ledge, so he can utilize more of the enclosure. He has bioactive substrate, and he has a deep heat projector. He was a rescue situation from someone I know in the community who lives a couple hours away, and they had rescued him and another gecko. They kept the other gecko and then gave Oberon to me. He loves to bite me and he's super shy, but I love him even if he does not love me. The last animal I have to show in the pet room is Sasha, my growing garter snake. She came to me from a friend who was getting garter snakes for themselves and found a pet-only group of baby garters who came from an accidental pairing. Sasha is intended to live with Mikasa, but she needs to get big enough first. For now, she's in this 18 by 18 by 12 enclosure. It is not permanent, so please don't think that you can keep a garter snake in an enclosure this small. She has a halogen bulb for heating, some log hides, a humid hide, EcoEarth as substrate, and a water dish made from a deli cup because she's still growing, so I didn't want to buy her a nice one yet because she's going to need a bigger one anyway when she gets older. Sasha has a great demeanor, a voracious appetite. She's super curious. She's definitely more easygoing than Mikasa, so that's nice to experience, and I'm really happy that I have her. She also has a big log piece, and this enclosure was actually adapted for her after Gamakichi passed away, because this used to be Gamakichi's enclosure. Now we move on to the big downstairs enclosures. I can't give you a full overview of my setup of all of them because I have a really big secret that I'm hiding in one of them, in Franklin's old enclosure, because as many of you know, my dearly beloved bearded dragon Franklin passed away this year from cancer, so it's just very sad times. But his enclosure was empty for a while until I had a surrender this week. I talked about that on Patreon, but I can't give you an overview because I'm not ready to talk about it publicly yet. So this is my blue-tongued skink Haku, who lives in a 4x2x2 Zen Habitats enclosure. All of the enclosures you're going to see from here on out are Zen Habitats enclosures, and I have a link with them if you would like to get one. It's down below. Haku's enclosure features multiple cork hides, a basking rock, grapevine logs, a substrate blend of cypress mulch, EcoEarth, and organic topsoil, and plants from Petco. The enclosure is heated with a halogen bulb and features a linear UVB by Arcadia. The water dish was not in Haku's enclosure at the time of filming, but I just wanted to capture Haku moving around so much because when I did a nice, revitalization of the enclosure, Haku was like, oh, I have to check this out. There'll be a brief clip at the end to show you where I place the water bowl. And it's not even a bowl, it's a container because, Haku's very big. So to find a bowl that's big enough is hard. Haku was a reptile that my ex bought in 2017. And then when we split, he left Haku with me. Haku is a super cool lizard. Looks like a T-Rex that got stretched out. Like someone was drawing what they thought a T-Rex should look like in a software program and accidentally used a tool that elongated the body and was like, nah, this is it. This is the way it should look. Hilarious looking creatures with a wide range of foods they can eat, which makes keeping them really fun for me. And if you're wondering if Haku and their tiny little legs could utilize the log that I placed in between the two cork hides to make an elevated level and get down and up safely, the answer is clearly yes, as Haku just demonstrated. I also want to specify really quickly that Haku is in a Zen Habitats with PVC panels, not wood ones. This is my Uromastyx Wren, who was adopted through Crimson Exotics. Wren hates me with a fiery passion and hides whenever I come around, so you'll only get to see her face briefly. In Wren's enclosure, we have 2 log hides, a big rock hide, which is her favorite, and grapevine logs throughout. The substrate is organic topsoil and wash play sand with a little bit of wood mixed in. The plants are from Petco and Custom Reptile Habitats, again, linked below. She has a basking rock under her halogen and she has a secondary heating with a deep heat projector over her hide. This species likes it really warm, and so in order to produce enough warmth, I had to use 2 bulbs, which a lot of people do. It's pretty normal. So it's nice to have 2 sources of heat. She also has a linear UVB by Arcadia. Next up is my bearded dragon Nova, who was brewmating for over a month, and then when I tidied her enclosure for filming, she decided to come out. So let's give a round of applause. Thank you, Nova. Thank you for coming out. She's still looking a little sleepy, but that's okay. I saw Nova for rehoming on Craigslist in 2018, and I had to have her. She's a great bearded dragon, even though the moment that the sunlight touches her, like real sunlight, she turns into a wild creature. Nova's enclosure features a substrate blend of topsoil and washed play sand, 2 log hides, grapevine logs, fake plants from custom reptile habitats, link in bio, and also Petco, and she has basking rocks. She has a halogen basking lamp and UVB by Arcadia, and here she is eating some dubia roaches. I also want to specify real quickly that she is in a Zen Habitats made with wood panels, not PVC ones. And finally, we have my Leachianus enclosure and my Leachianus gecko Rin. This is a 2x2x4 Zen Habitats enclosure. It is a PVC one and it's arboreal. Again, link in the description. Rin's breeder reached out to me in 2019 with a juvenile Leachie who had a slight underbite, a bit of a flat skull, and she was a picky eater. They asked if I wanted to take Rin in as a pet only, and I enthusiastically, emphatically said yes because I had been waiting for a pet only Leachie for years. I love Rin. She is such a sassy camouflage creature. I don't mind in the slightest that she has disdain for me because I love her so much. And now for a brief intermission to hear just how much she hates me. Despite having like 7 or 8 hides and tons of little dark places, she'd rather sit out in the open so she can bark and hiss at everybody who walks by and let them know that this is her house. The enclosure features cork, manzanita driftwood, some fake plants from Amazon, and the background was made using the Gorilla Glue method. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and a comment. Also, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. Also, please consider supporting us on Patreon or by becoming a channel member. We would love to have you. With all that said, I appreciate your time. This was a long one, I know, so if you made it this far, comment. If you made it this far, comment about Rin, who is the last animal that you saw in this video. Again, I thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!